All right, Cyber Traders, good morning and welcome on back here for another fantastic edition of our Traders Talk Workshop here this Tuesday, June 14th, shortly after 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Great to see all of our students and members alike inside the Cyber Group room. We have Robert, Ron, we have Norman joining us once again, Kurt, John, we have Yehuda joining us, and Joanne. A lot of us did really well here this morning on this REV trade. So big shout out to anyone that did very nicely on this stock, but I want to shout out some names just in particular as we review this trade from head to toe. But great to see all of us just joining us on social media, Facebook Live and YouTube today. Normally 2 or 3 times across the calendar year, we'll look to provide you our weekly Traders Talk workshop that is normally exclusively done inside our live trading room. So at the end of this workshop, for all of us on social media, if you were looking to continue with this going forward, just go right down to the link on the blue banner below to sign up for a trial membership to our live trading room. And then from there, you'll look to work with one of our education advisors. But with that said, I believe, folks, we are good to go. Janice says she can't hear me inside the live trading room, causing me a little paranoia, but I believe I'm good from Ronald and Ron and Robert and everyone else otherwise. So just give me a quick moment. Give me a quick moment, folks. Telling Janice just to log out and log back in otherwise. So we are good. So folks, really quickly, for all of us on social media, my name is Josh Levitan. I'm Fausto's senior instructor here at Cyber Trading University. So I conduct our weekly Traders Talk workshop here in our live trading room. Alongside that, our phase 1 and 2 stock course. But if you have any questions going forward, whether it be during this presentation live or on recording afterwards, send over an email. Josh@c2trading.com is my email. So even after this workshop is complete on recording, any questions that you may have, stock trading, crypto trading, anything that we're talking about here within this workshop, email me and I'll have more than enough time to write you back. Don't worry about that. But folks, right now we have a lot to talk about here. So, first and foremost, Traders Talk here is a quick introduction to this workshop. This is really the best outlet aside from the main actual curriculum that we provide as to knowing why a stock made the exact move that it made. Right? You almost have to put yourself in the shoes of a 4-year-old or 5-year-old or 6-year-old. Why? Why did the stock go up? Why? Why did the stock make this exact move? Why? You really need to as a student, because the more that you do that in hindsight, it should give you a better idea as far as what the stock will look to do live in the moment. Now, aside from just saying that, we do need to have great screen time and just, live market, trading, right? We need to put pen to paper, put practice to matter. And with that, of course, we need to always just look to just try and trade as much as possible. But with that, though, here in Traders Talk, this gives us the best chance to cover these moves. So with that, this morning in particular, I was personally following like 2 stocks at first. I'm tagging in for Fausto this morning. He's out on business in Florida. He'll be back on Thursday. So it's hard for me to juggle a lot of things at once, right? Hey, I'm a human just like all of you, right? So I wasn't prepped up as I normally am. So I was only focused on 2 stocks going into the market open today. And then really out of nowhere, we'll get to those 2 stocks, but I just want to sum up my morning personally to you, and then we'll go over we'll go over the REV trade. But the natural gas short ETF cold, we ended up seeing this thing explode. So with that, this caught my eye right before the market opened. There's a lot moving here going into the opening bell, folks. So it was pretty hard personally for me to buckle down on, just not just one stock, but the perfect setup at the right time. So ultimately, and we'll get to REV in a bit, I ended up missing the REV trade. We were calling it out right out the gate, at 9:38 in the morning. And I'll show all of us on social media the dialogue, the chat we have from inside our live trading room, the call outs, the students that have made money on it so far today. But, it's just that we were on top of this REV trade as far as calling it out from the get-go. Me personally, with juggling so much that I have this morning, my own trading, calling out things, I'm doing the whole, audio myself. That is pretty tough. I missed out on it. I missed out on the REV trade personally myself. It's a shame. So with that, I had to adjust. I felt as if I'd be chasing the REV trade if I got in from when I first looked at it. So, the more I pushed up, the more I missed out on it, obviously. But I personally had to adjust. So that's where I had to more so stick with the 2 or 3 stocks or symbols that I took the time to focus on and prep and chart. I can't let anything else get in my way, right? because I am prepped up on KALV. I am prepped up on Neo, which was up like 6% or 5%, I believe, in pre-market. But with that though, as much as I missed out on REV, I can't let anything else become a distraction to me, right? In terms of trader psychology, that's huge because there's so much moving on this one screen to begin with. I always like to generalize it and say the fast moving numbers, the bright colors on the screen, then all of the call outs that we're making inside the live trading room that are popping up on our scanners. And then on top of that, just the whole strategy that we need to focus on and incorporate and apply. So there's a lot to focus on in one moment here, right? So personally, I started off on the KALV trade. My morning altogether was fairly so-so. KAVL, my trader's dyslexia here. I'm sorry. KAVL. KAVL. There we go. So this stock ran in after hours yesterday. It's cheap. It was really liquid in pre-market. If I were to ask all of us inside the live trading room, hey, what stock were you most interested in following going into the open? From pre-market leading into the open, I bet y'all have half of us saying the HUSA trade, then half of us saying KVL. That's just my shoot from the hip guess, right? Well, with this, rightfully so, every one of us should have been focused on it going into the open. But this was teasing a big break of support to begin with. So with that, once the market opened, it finally snapped off from that 250 level. I was calling out support in pre-market on this trade off of 235. So with that, it led to a small bounce at first. I ended up getting an entry off at 235 exactly. And with that, it pushed up. I took half my money out right at 240. It's the type of stock you could trade a lot of shares of, thankfully. So, just take a small profit to begin with. Transparently enough, I was down yesterday. I took a losing day yesterday. Well, actually, one of my first in the last 2.5-3 weeks. I was down 168 by the end of the day. Now, in the grand scheme, that's not life-changing money that I lost. And compared to the last few days, thankfully enough, knock on wood, it's all right. But I better make sure I'm in the plus today. Like, it's not often I have a losing day. So, today I'm definitely more keen to take my nickels and dimes, take my tiny profits, and move on with my morning, right? The more I do that, then I'll have a cushion to try and take myself to my day's pay level, that $1,000 day, if not a lot more. So there, I ended up taking half out very quickly, and then I let the other half go break even. So I let the other half just go completely break even off 235. But from there, look at it now. This thing completely is in the dumps. So, it's easy to say, but this is the exact reason why you can't just buy the news and just hope for the stock to run up, right? Because good news came out on the stock, I believe, this morning early in pre-market. So with that, led to the score from after hours, I believe, yesterday, which led to a nice push in pre-market at first, but, ended up continuing to drop off after the open. And with that, it's only been a great short if you're able to get the shares. It's hard to borrow my platform. But, ever since, like, I stopped looking at it even after it was kind of like teasing the move back up here, just in our audio broadcast in our live trading room. For all of us that were there and watching and listening, you heard me adamantly say, I'm not a believer in this year. Where my cursor is right there, I'm not a believer. We were finishing up the audio commentary, right? I was jumping on a coaching call with one of our students, and adamantly, I was saying, I am not a believer here because it was already at resistance. It needed to flip resistance into support, and it already moved up a decent amount from the low there. I just was expecting a lower high, and nonetheless, not only did we get the lower high, but obviously only continued to drop off a lot more. So this actually broke below my next support level I have on my other screen. That was off of 211, 208, and I didn't even watch it from there. I didn't jump in. I didn't focus on it when I was on my coaching call with my student. We were watching Coinbase at the time. But nonetheless, I mean, maybe right now this is due for a bounce. It's at a whole number. So maybe during this Traders Talk workshop, it could make that beginning squeeze up. Maybe, looking at the trend off the highs, it certainly doesn't seem like it wants to, right? But, it's at a whole number. And for as much as it dropped already, when will it begin to bounce? So you were asking that question at the open, but obviously the more it drops, that's where you anticipate, all right, well, this should make at least a decent move. So you don't want to keep thinking that the whole way and not focus on anything else, obviously, right? Alongside KAVL, my trader's dyslexia there. Aside from the KAVL trade, I was following Neo, and I also took a small profit on Neo over the morning. Ultimately missed out on REV, which again we'll get back to. We'll do the full A to Z review. We'll bring up Bookmap for the REV trade in a bit. But yeah, the KAVL trade obviously right now it doesn't look too great. Maybe off of $2 this could bounce coming up. And then Neo is the other one. Thankfully enough, Neo has been a great trade today long. Great move. SPY obviously beginning to pull back a little bit, lower here at this point, or about to. Neo going completely against the grain. So this stock we were following in pre-market alongside LI, which is another Chinese EV stock. I don't know what's going on with the Chinese stocks today. I don't know if they're all pushing up collectively. It looked like at the market open, the China market was at first, but it's pretty flat now. But yeah, Neo made a really good move earlier this morning. And thankfully, this was just one of the other 2 or 3 symbols I personally took the time to chart and prep myself up for. So although I missed out on REV, I didn't let anything else get in my way. I didn't let that become a distraction otherwise. Yeah, I missed out on REV, and the more it pushes up, the more frustrated you get missing out on it. But folks, you can't let emotion or negative emotion in particular get in the way, because there's other business to handle. So with Neo here on this trade, I actually missed the slingshot on this as I was following that last one. So I wish I could tell you off of 1650 I got in, or even off of 17 when it re-broke here. This was a great setup that led to an easy pop. The more this squeezed up, I was anticipating support. So I know this could be easy to say just looking at the chart afterwards, but I ended up charting alongside 1734 as a major support level. That was the weekly close, I believe, from the prior week. So talking about like closing bell prints and whatnot, just looking at the week here, it looks like 1808, 1814 here. I think maybe from past. I charted 1734 as a key weekly support level. So that once it broke above it, it pulled back, and fortunately enough, it wasn't on the largest share size. It wasn't on a full-size position because it was like kind of an assumptive position to take. But, hey, thankfully it worked out where it ended up running up really nicely. I ended up getting out on this trade over 1760. I just didn't want to, waste the profit from that point. So obviously pushed up a lot more after. But a couple of things just to point out to here, again, before we dig into the REV in full. In terms of my personal morning, even with the experience I have and, intuition and, hey, I do the same song and dance every single day with you folks, every day. So I should have a pretty good morning. The more that you do this and the exact process that we go through in class of finding your smart money levels and prepping them up early in pre-market, well, not every day is going to be the same. You'll have better mornings than others, or better afternoons than others, or some days may even be a losing day, like yesterday. But you have to learn from your mistakes. You have to get yourself in a position to start taking some smaller profits at first. You start getting your cushion money at first, and then you could try and extend trades later on. So, right now, obviously, we're doing Traders Talk. If it was any other weekday of the week, I would be trading at this very point with a student in coaching. It's possible that I'd still be trading Neo here. I'm sure there's going to be another trade for me later on today. I can care less. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? So there's always going to be another move for us to call out inside our live trading room. And with that, we'll see where this trade takes us alongside others. We'll jump to the KOLD ETF in a bit. That's also another one I ended up trading. That was one I took with a student on a coaching call just earlier before we started the Traders Talk workshop. If we have enough time, we'll get to that because there is something I do want to cover on that. Actually, it wasn't cold. It was actually its inverse ticker, UNG. UNG, I believe that was. So UNG, we ended up trading based off of cold. But let's go into the main attraction here. Obviously, Neo is doing a really good job pushing up still. But the REV, oh my goodness. REV was, hey, just another day, another runner where a stock breaks over 100% gain on the day. So not out of the ordinary for us inside our live trading room, but it's crazy to have happen as fast as it does, right? So this thing just out of nowhere, shortly after the market opened up, ended up making an initial move. And then from there, well, it dumped off, but then it ended up actually re-breaking higher a bit later on. So what I want to do here is I want to show you the full A to Z chat that we have inside our live trading room. I normally don't do this just during Traders Talk, but we're doing this on YouTube and Facebook Live today. So just for a small glimpse to see the chat, what we're talking about inside our live trading room day to day. This will be a microcosm of that, but this is exactly what we do. So at first, at 9:05 in the morning, Norman, one of our students, made 11 cents on it when I was doing the morning meeting. It was off 150. So really, at first, one of our students was on it initially then. Then after the market opened at 9:38, I said REV moving up. And then at 9:55, like we were already following it, just I retyped it in the trading room because there's some riffraff that gets in between. So, I recall it out, REV. But really from there, students like Robert, students like, Michael, Joe, I have to give Joe a big shout out today. He made 72 cents on it, I believe. Nina got about 55 cents on it. Joanne had a $400 profit, enough to pay her electric bill across 2 houses, I recall she wrote in the trading room. So, a lot of us did really well on this trade throughout the day. So I want to give a big shout out to those students and anyone else that, hey, you don't need to post your profit in the room. If you made money on this trade and are gun shy or, whatever the case may be. But if you did well on this trade in our trading room, congratulations. Let's go over this thing, though, in full. Why did we call this out? And, what price levels were we focused on this trade? So, that's really the premise here of our weekly Traders Talk workshops. All right, so at 9:38, I had called it out there at first. Norman made the first profit on it off 150. But really at 9:38, I want to show you what level 4 looks like right now. I want to show you what bookmap, aka level 4, would look like right at that very point in time. So how could we anticipate this REV move before it actually happens? Not every stock gives you the time that REV gave us for us to anticipate the move. There are some stocks that just completely explode. They halt within a second, and that's it, right? So we know that there's not as much time on those stocks. All right. Well, even beginning in pre-market, this had some good activity. It's laying over 150, 152 here, it seems like. So, after the open, at least, this is when I had first called it out when it was just moving up. I just wrote it in the trading room, REV moving up. That's it. Nothing fancy. Now, from there, let me ask you. From basically where my cursor is, this is when we had first called out REV. So from where my cursor is, what's the first iceberg resistance that we have on REV? For Bill and Janice and Robert and Norman and Kurt and Yehuda and Nina and all of us here, what's our first iceberg resistance looking at level 4? And for all of us on YouTube, how about this? Why don't you answer as well if you know? If any one of us on YouTube knows, feel more than free to answer. Got Rizwana, got Carol, Nina, Janice, Norman, all answering inside our live trading room. So, I would say 171 here, 170-ish. Give me a quick second. I don't know what the heck just happened there. Pardon me. Got to reset this. Give me a quick moment. Just lost my space, but all good. So I was going to hit towards 170, right? 170. There's about 10,000 shares on the ask. It might look very tough to read if you're unfamiliar with bookmap or level 4. I'm going to try and re-expand it here and make it look better. But you could see the orange line at 170. And right to the right of that line, you can see about 10,000 shares that's currently there, roughly at 170. So that is our first resistance as this initially made its first pop. And when we first called it out, 170 was the first resistance to watch at the time. So I believe right then and there ended up shaking back down, right? And at that point, we kind of write it off. We kind of write it off at that point because, if it just moves up to resistance and then drops and then just completely pulls back like this, much more often than not, like we're moving on to other trades. The Neos out there, the Coinbase is out there that were popping at the time, the red boxes. So really, like we didn't really call this stock out again up until like 952, 953, when it was beginning to push back up a lot higher. So right then and there, well, hey, pushing back up, here's our 170 resistance. Now, for us, our best entries to buy a stock are directly after it breaks through a big level on the way up, right? That's the motto. That's my, campaign slogan if I ever run for president here. Best entries to buy a stock are directly after it breaks through a big level on the way up. Now, I jokingly say that because, I'm very redundant with that catchphrase, right? You hear that every week in Traders Talk. You hear that every month in class, coaching sessions. So here, if this breaks above that orange line at 170, I would like to think it would give the stock a pretty good chance to try and run up a lot higher. Now, there are other orders for the stock to try and break above here at 180 and 182. And the more we look, maybe $2 here or like 197. This order isn't as big, nor this one. But, maybe 180 could be resistant. So no guarantee. But 170 is the first big resistance for us to work with on this trade. And again, we had called this out before this ended up running over that price. So, you have to try and find your levels first, but it popped above that resistance and very quickly it flipped it into a support, right? Notice it came down here. The blue, green and red squiggly lines here are just basically the stock moving up and down. That's the bid and the ask. So that's the movement of the trade. Well, it held above 170. Resistance turned into support. So with that, I mean, I'd be pretty keen to jump in directly after it breaks through the level on the way up, right? Now, I think that answers one of our questions live inside the trading room from Rizwana. Based on level 4, how can the resistance, we find out the resistance? So we just answered that looking at the orange line right here. But then also asking, should we keep waiting? So that's my motto, right? When it breaks through a big level on the way up, directly after, immediately after. Now, it's not as black and white as that. If trading was that easy, none of us would be here, right? If for every time that I bought a stock directly after it broke through a big level on the way up that I made the perfect trade, I wouldn't be here. So that's where I say there's a lot more to it than that, but that is our underlying philosophy. That is our whole underlying philosophy, right? Now, there's some more questions coming in inside the live trading room, so I'm going to get to those in just a bit from Janice and also Rizwana and Lewis, perhaps. Lewis saying set a stop at the breakthrough. Definitely, that's a huge talking point, right? So it's not just as easy as just jumping in, kicking your feet back, and sipping your margarita, right? I don't have margarita here, but 5 o'clock somewhere, right? But nonetheless, the stock ended up making the push. You want to set your stop, though, directly under that big level, right? Not literally a penny, but you try and give yourself a little cushion room. And we have a whole class within the Phase 2 curriculum that talks about setting stops, risk management, taking profits, right? Nonetheless, resistance flipped into support. The rest was pretty much history. This stock ended up running up so fast where it ended up getting halted at one point, I believe, right? So this just kept going. And that's where I told you that I missed out on the stock because I missed it from the 170 level. Personally, I was following other stocks, and that's okay. I can't follow every stock under the sun, right? So, you can't, I can't, and there's no need to. We just need to follow the ones that we feel give us just a pretty damn good chance at making money. We have to find our levels. And with that, hey, REV took off. So for students like Nina that got in at 180, well, it took off and she was able to hold on and she got out at 233. Joe is in the trade from $2, I think, right? He answered that during the audio broadcast. But, he got stopped out on the trade at 272. I think he made a 72-cent profit. This is afterwards, so we're going to talk about the halt coming up. So just we'll talk about Robert Century, Joanne, and Robert again. Just going over this, but even from 170, 180, 190, this just kept giving, and you can't always expect that. So thankfully for Joe, thankfully for Nina, not only did they make money on it, but they made good money on it. They made like respectable days pay type of income on one trade, right? Now, even if they didn't make that money, so to say, let's say if they're trading 100 shares, right, and they make 50 cents a share. All right, well, let's do a lot more of this because the more of this you do, I'm pretty certain you'll have the confidence to gracefully increase your share size, right? So what works on 100 shares works on 1,000 shares. So even when the stock got halted, I was telling Joe and Nina right then, hey, if you're up like, that money, that 50 cents or, 60 cents, however much it may be, and you're not normally up that much on one position, who the hell cares if it moves up any higher after you get out? So when it reopened up, that's when Joe got out. That's when Nina got out. It pushed up a little bit higher after, right? So ultimately, hey, made a great move, and there was actually a lot more to give on this trade. So let's talk about the halt right now. And then from there, I know I have a lot of questions coming in from the chat board here, really briefly from Janice and others. So, I'll get to the chat here in just a bit. But when this stock gets halted, what do we do? Well, we have to find our levels. When a stock gets halted, it's likely because it moved up too much too fast. It's called a circuit breaker halt. Up down volatility halt, they call it. So essentially, there's about 5 minutes time in order for the stock to reopen. So you have time to find your levels really quick. And again, we're going to get to the questions here in a bit. I'm not ignoring them, but really quick for all of us just in the trading room, all of us in YouTube. Hey, answer this as well. In terms of finding your iceberg orders, very general question. What very common set of price levels are we most likely to find the big iceberg orders at? Hey, we had the iceberg here at 170 and it took off. But just generally speaking, what common set of price levels are we most likely to have big iceberg orders located? Yeah, whole number levels. And in this case, for a cheap stock like this too, 50-cent price levels, whole number price levels and 50-cent price levels. So how about this really quick? I'll peel this back, peel this back up here in a bit. But when this ends up, moving up so much that it gets halted, well, we have time to find our levels. So let's just draw a line at 2. Let's draw a line at 250. Let's draw a line at 3. Let's just see how those levels played out throughout the day. Give me a quick second here. And we have a bunch of questions to get through, not just through the chat, but also through email, folks. We're probably going to go a little bit over on time. I have no problem doing that here today. All right, so 250, 3. Now, also, something else that was like pretty interesting. Let me bring this back up. If I could bring this back up. There we go. Before this stock got halted, maybe more of us inside the live trading room, you could answer this one. Before the stock got halted, is there anything in particular that you see otherwise? Maybe not a line going across the screen, folks. Maybe not a line going across the screen, but is there something in particular that you notice on this screen before it got halted? Before it got halted, anything that you notice here on the heat map on level 4? Lewis says an iceberg. Bill says lots of selling at 266. Bill, I agree on that. Yeah, that's a great point. That's a very good point. How about that? I like that. But something easier on the eyes to see. Something that is on the heat map, not one of the columns that you would normally look at otherwise, and it's not one of the lines. Again, That's just the hint I'll give you. It's not a line, but it's on the heat map. Tam here joining us, perhaps one of our trial members, saying spread widens. Well, that's also true when you see a halt. So good point, correct. Not what I'm looking for. It's actually easier on just something else. There we go. There we go from Rod, one of my coaching students here. And then Robert follows up shortly behind him saying, big selling ball, big red volume dot. What the heck is this? Now, with the data box that pops up here, don't focus on anything aside from where it says volume. And it says 118,996 at 205. That right there shows you that we have a pretty big sell print, a pretty big print on the tape. It was technically filled on the bid, so technically we here at CTU call that a sell print, so to say. So, that is pretty big. 118,000 shares. Think about it. Compare that size, let's just do a quick eyeball test, folks. Let's look at the orders that are currently on level 3 as this stock is moving live right now. 20,000, 18,000, 9,800. What's bigger? Those or, 118,000 shares, 119,000. So when this stock got halted, we had time to look that up. That's the point, right? When this stock got halted, we had time to identify that on the heat map. There was a giant red dot there that was, pretty easy on the eyes to see, I thought. So that in its own right could be a strong level. That is a big level for us to follow going forward on this trade. Now, we'll see if it ends up coming down to 205 later on or not. But when a stock does get halted, it takes a few minutes for it to reopen up. And when it reopens up, much like at the market open for any of my phase 2 students that are with us monthly, well, you would know that we would have what's called the opening print. Well, here we have a very similar dot to what we actually had just before the halt. Right here is when it reopened up. This is a similar size transaction. It's 111,000 plus shares, and the price is at 267. All right, so 267 is a level, right? That's a pretty big level. There's one more level that I see here. We'll plot just those two lines, and then we'll kind of see how it looks like on the TradeStation chart. But alongside, $3 as a whole number, I find it interesting that, hey, before this stock got halted, and even after the halt a bit after, right around 312, I think that is, at $3.10, $3.12. See that? I mean, obviously you have an orange line that goes across the screen there, but it's about 20,000 shares on the ask. So, hey, that could be pretty big too, right? So we'll draw a line at 267, and we'll draw a line at 312. All right, so I'm going to peel back the book map here, the level 4, and we'll go over it again if we need to. I have some questions coming in the chat board, a lot of them, in fact, so we'll get through everything here just in a bit. So 267 is one of those two lines that I'd mentioned. That's where we saw the opening print when it reopened up from the halt. And then this one I'll just make blue to just denote like an iceberg level, maybe not as big as a 50-cent level or whole number, but let's see what happens here. 312, right? 312. All right. So what happened to REV when this reopened up from its halt? This is the question that we're answering right now. Well, it ended up popping back up a little bit higher later on. It moved all the way up to, well, it broke above 312, but it basically hit that top resistance line that we just drew at 312, essentially a false breakout from there, right? One quick rule, just very general rule here, and again, I'm going to go through all these questions in the chat board here in a bit, but the more and more and more and more the stock moves up, not only do you become more reluctant on jumping in because you think it's going to pull back, but one common rule is that the more and more and more a stock goes up, for the first time it's testing a key iceberg resistance or key resistance, you should expect a false breakout. So the more this pushes up after it reopens, well, hey, at $3, I would have expected a false breakout from there. I mean, you could just say from 312, from that top iceberg order that we just charted, well, it broke above it, but obviously it came right back down. It's a false breakout from that level. And hey, maybe if it held better in terms of in direction, if it held above 250 better and moved back up to 3, at this time of the day, and it retested 312 later on. Well, the more and more buying that we have off of that specific price, you would expect for that to lead to a big reaction, a big pop, hopefully, and from there for you to take the trade. But otherwise, though, to go through some questions here in the chat board, we're going to basically analyze this move just, as we answer these questions. So I'm going to scroll all the way up right now. Give me a quick moment. All right, so from Rizwana, I think we'd answered this just a moment ago. Based on level 4, how can the resistance levels be, discovered or identified? By following the orange or red lines that are horizontally, going across that heat map there. And if they're there, across a long period of time, you would be led to believe they're there for a reason, right? They're a strong point of resistance or support. Otherwise, if it's below where the stock is trading. From Janice asking, is this bookmap used only on the NASDAQ? So bookmap is the name of the program officially. You can go to bookmap.com. If you have Thinkorswim, you could actually contact them for, again, the name is bookmap. You'll hear us refer to it as level 4, perhaps. Bookmap has data from NASDAQ, but it also has data from another ECN called the EDGX, the Direct Edge EDGX ECN. So it's two. And I spoke with one of the main guys from Bookmap actually last week on Monday. Bruce, great guy. He's presented at our Trader Summit numerous times. He'll probably be back here in October. No official plans on that yet, but I would assume he'll be back. But some pretty interesting news regarding the data for Bookmap coming up, folks. Interesting as in pretty exciting. So I'm looking forward to him officially revealing that. He told me to keep my mouth shut otherwise. So some interesting stuff on the up and up for level 4. So Rizwana was asking basically just before, are these buying levels? They can be buying levels. They can be. So first, you want to identify just where the big levels are from the heat map, from the order books, from the big transactions that were already filled. That is what creates these levels. Alongside that, just assumed levels. Even if there's not a big iceberg or big red line at a 50-cent level or whole number, you would certainly want to assume for those to be at least big support or resistance, hence the blue lines. But they could be levels. Now, what does that mean, right? Like that doesn't give you much clarity. Well, think about it this way. If your best entries to buy a stock are directly after it breaks through a big level on the way up, well, let me just try and blow this up briefly here. Granted, after it pulled back here, right? Think about after the pullback, because the more it goes up, you're definitely expecting a shakedown. So where could we find support? That's the question that you could ask. Well, as it pulls down from 312 and 3, our first key level to try and anticipate support is at 267. Try. Now, with that said, if that's support, or if we're looking for that to be support, we would need for that to essentially not just hold above the level, but for us to take this entry, me in particular, I like to wait to see it actually slam under the level. But if it breaks right back over the level, I will look to take that trade and then have a tight stop set. So with this, there's a point where it breaks under the level. If we're being really official here, how about this? It actually closes under that line, which I don't really care as much for, but it just goes to show on the next bar, it clearly breaks back above the level. And right here on the green bar, ideally enough, like I would look to take that trade if I was watching this at the time. If I was really intent on trading REV at the time, which I wasn't, I could see myself taking this exact trade. would it lead me to a great trade? No. Would it be a good entry? If you're getting in right over 267, like 1 or 2 pennies, 3 pennies above the level, and you're not chasing it, I'd give you a good grade on the entry. Remember, you don't control this stock, right? I don't know how many shares you're trading, and this goes for any one of us, not just Rizwana here, but just any one of us, myself included. I drop my own ego, of course, on this. If I was trading the stock on 1,000 shares, do you think my 1,000 shares does anything to this trade and the direction of it? No. So if I get in and this stock doesn't make the move I want it to make, well, you best get out. Because one of my common catchphrases, which, again, like you hear this all the time in Traders Talk Weekly. So, for all of us in social media, this is something that we do on a week-to-week basis here. When a stock breaks through a big level, generally speaking, you should see a pretty big move shortly after. Think about that. Very abstract, general catchphrase, but when it breaks under and over right here, if I were to jump in right here at 268, 269, I better be getting a pretty big move shortly after. Now, how big is big, right? That's the next question. Well, hey, if it can get back up to 3, I'd be content. We'd see where it would go from there, right? That's my next level. So, I'll play it level to level here. Why can't this be the next red box? Why can't this be the next, crazy 500% mover? It could be, or it could have been. I don't think it is now. We'll see. I doubt it now at this point. But, it's just to say, like, right where my cursor here is, the green, it would have been a great entry. But you don't control the stock. If we're not going to see as much buying on the trade, guess what? It's going to make a big move. I guarantee you that. If it's not going to make a big move up, I guarantee you it's going to make a big move. 100%. Not the move you're looking for. So you have to set your stop. You have to manage the trade tightly, right? Now, over time, this became a bad trade over time. It was teasing us, I'm sure. So I moved on from this trade earlier. I missed out on the big run. Is it possible that one could have jumped in from 250 and got out at 267 here? Easily. And the stock thankfully has a liquid order book, so it gives you that ability. It's not like a level 5 stock, right? It's a pain in the ass and it's teasing us. But, a couple of, trades here and there off the levels. Oh, watch this thing snap now and pop. Watch this snap the VWAP here and go. That would be pretty hilarious. Hey, that would be pretty cool, right, to see? We just charted this stock. And on the flip side, hey, it's teasing us. Well, hey, what if it does break above 250 here, or namely even 267 for the times it's teased the buying here, and although it led to a nasty shake, you're seeing buying for every instance it's breaking above 67. How much buying? You have to look on Bookmap 4, the heat map, or at least level 3 if you have it. But obviously, if it doesn't break 250 here, then there's no trade. I would only expect this to really pull back further. Pull back down closer to 205. Question from Rizwana. Can we see these big red dots ahead of time on Bookmap? Well, they come in real time. So, that's where I was really harping on the fact that when the stock got halted, how could you prep the levels beforehand? Oh, there we go. There's our shakedown. Held 250 like a magnet. Didn't break 250. Now a big old shake lower. Yeah, we could see this definitely drop down to 205 than otherwise. We'll see. I think that's pretty much it from the chat board so far. For any one of us on YouTube or Facebook Live, if you have any questions, feel more than free to chat me right now. I have a bunch more to go through, though, from email. So, for Donna and Rosina and Egan, I think we have a few questions just from email that I want to make sure I cover. All right. So all in all, long story short, so far across the day, you don't need to catch the craziest, biggest, sexiest looking stock in order to make your days pay. You just need to be very grounded on the stocks that you took the time to prep at least before the market opens. You should be at your trading desk by like 8 o'clock Eastern time, no later really than 8:30 Eastern time every morning. So if you're at your desk then and there, and if you're not like really swinging for the fences in pre-market, then you really need to be taking your time to identify these levels beforehand. And it gives you a better ability to focus on the underlying philosophy. It gives you a better ability to just try and focus on when it breaks through a big level on the way up. All right, so give me a quick sec, folks. I'm actually kind of trying to cross my T's here because I'm even going through my spam folder right now. Got a couple that unfortunately landed in there from Janice and Bill. Give me a quick second. Just readjusting. All right, so let's start off here. We got from Egan, I believe. He wanted me to go over a trade, I believe. I think he had. And you know what? I want to just jump back on something for all of us live inside the trading room because you just heard me shout out his name there. I would normally make all trade reviews pretty anonymous here, but I'll tell you what, Egan had a pretty good trade here. So I want to give him a nice shout publicly. Egan's one of our gold students here inside our live trading room, and he's been doing a few coaching sessions with me over the last month or so. The AERC trade, he ended up taking 2 trades on. I don't know if this is from yesterday or the day before. I believe it would be from yesterday, Monday, right? So he ended up taking 2 trades on this stock, did pretty nice. He was in from 1272, got out at 1320, made nearly 50 cents on that trade, and then he took a second one in from 1755 much later on, as it skyrocketed up and got out at 1771. So smaller trade there. This is the thing with AERC, right? Like, again, not every stock could be AERC that, over the last 7-8 trading days went from 3 up to 18 and change, right? So, you don't want to hold your breath waiting for that move, but this is the type of stock that, unless if you really get in low and are like straight up gambling, let's just be honest with ourselves. Like if you're in from like $5 and it runs up to 18 and you've been holding on the whole way through, you're literally gambling, just, looking for the home run, right? So, this is the type of stock that you're like strategically otherwise trying to get in, get out, in and out. Not to say scalp per se, but based on level to level, right? And if you're up a decent amount, that's where you should just be more comfortable to take the profit ahead of time than not. So with this trade, Egan ended up getting in yesterday. He ended up getting in, let me go back on his email, sorry. 1272 out at 1320. So I can't do the full A to Z review on this trade like I did on the REV, just a time constraint here briefly, but we'll show the heat map. We'll bring it up at least to see what it looked like after the market opened up for this trade. Let's see if I can get this. There we go. All right, so I'm going to try and zoom in here pretty briefly. So the AERCU stock was one that we were watching going into yesterday morning. It was pretty active early on, but it's just to say it was one from the last week that obviously took off. So how could we not follow it again, at some point throughout the morning? So, it took off pretty quickly, and from there it got our attention. It was dropping off leading into the market open, kind of flat, dropping off a little bit there in pre-market. So it was kind of unassuming at first when it took off, but that's where you have to try and anticipate. So at first, it looks like it ended up breaking above 1250. It looks like you had a pretty big resistance around 14. You could also say 1370-ish, 1375-ish, you can call that perhaps. But with 1250, it broke above 1250 resistance and it ran, right? Just simply put, it broke above 1250 and it ran, right? Quick question for all of us here live inside the trading room. When a stock breaks above resistance and it runs from it, resistance turns into what? Getting a dry mouth here. A lot of talking here to begin my week. 5 hours, 30 minutes yesterday talk time. And today I think I got 4 hours and 30 minutes. So resistance turns into support, right? Now, I love the comment that Ron has here at the end. Sometimes Now, to be more clear, though, right? To be more clear, because sometimes it's like ambiguous. It's like, there's uncertainty there. Maybe, maybe not. Then what's the point of even talking about this then? When a stock breaks above resistance and it runs from it, resistance should turn into support the first time. The first time. So you can't rely on 1250 to repetitively be support. Actually, the more times it tests that as support, needles it over and over, it should just slam under it and tank. So when it breaks above resistance and it runs from it, resistance should turn into support the first time. So ultimately, let's see what happens here across the day. Obviously, this thing took off and made a really big push. It broke above resistance. It pulled back. It wasn't 1250 as much that held. It was more just the VWAP in purple. But it looks like Egan had entered, roughly around this area here shortly after it broke above the 1250. And fortunately for him, he was able to get out, just a good profit, 50-cent profit roughly. Got out when it broke above 13, took his profit at 13.20. He didn't trade it afterwards, or at least up until the afternoon. So I find that pretty interesting because, hey, maybe Egan's not here all day. He has bigger and better things to do than be at his desk. I'm sure most of us do. So with that, stepped away perhaps, and it ran up a lot more. Maybe he was watching it. Who knows? But it's just to say that he came back to this trade a lot later on and ended up trading this when it was at like 1750 and change. So, Egan, let me ask you really quickly, because I know you're tuning in live in the trading room. What was the time of your second entry, if you recall? What was the time of the second entry? Book map here looks a little, choppy and a little fuzzy to read, so I'm actually going to peel this back, make it a little bit easier on the eyes to show the regular chart. But Egan got in on the second trade at 1755. Took a smaller profit, but I'm just interested in seeing the time in which he got in on that one because obviously it was a pretty tough trade after the initial run, and you can't keep expecting this to push. So the more it runs out of steam, you definitely expect this pullback. So thankfully, Egan made money on the second trade, right? Says, sorry, don't have it yet. No problem. No problem. I'm not gonna wait on you. It's all right. No sweat there. With that, at least, just 1750. Well, it seems like he either got in right here, which would make a really small scalp trade, if anything, or just here at this point, because otherwise, it begins to push above 50. And the more it needles that resistance, you hope to see continuation. You hope for that. So, truth be told, and easy to say in hindsight, perhaps, but 1750 was holding pretty nice as a chart level, sans the false break here. But that's a good sign. The more false breaks that you could see continuation. So if Egan got in right here off of 1750, kind of right where my cursor is, I would give him a pretty good grade on the entry, right? Pretty good grade. Now, granted, he fortunately made money, right? He got out with a profit. If he ended up taking a loss on this trade, I would have said, it's an all right entry, right where my cursor is. The question is, though, is that if it's not going to make that big move higher like you would hope for it to do, you can't only rely on hope, right? You need to set your stop. So with that, geez, if you don't set your stop on this trade, granted, if you don't get out with a profit like Egan did, whew, that's a nasty drop. So trust me when I tell you, when a stock breaks through a big level, much more often than not, you're going to be seeing a very big move shortly after. You got to set your stop tight. So if you don't, you're going to take a huge hit, right? That's the purpose of a big level. You don't want to be stuck on the wrong side of the move, though. All right. So let's see if we can keep going through my email inbox, folks. We'll go an extra 10 minutes. How about that? All right. So from Rosina here, one of our new trial members, perhaps just had a list of stocks here actually for me. But Rosina, I apologize there. So just from our trading room, just add a different spelling just from email, which threw me off briefly. So I apologize there. So question from Rosina here with pandemic stocks and requesting for me to review and guide them on how to get out of them since they are 84% down. Looking for help good advice to resume my money. So loosely speaking, because we are not financial advisors, we are not legally able to tell you to buy or sell a stock at a specific price or time, right? That's always the first thing that we say, because there's a bunch of people out there and blowhards, honestly, on YouTube that you look at, go on for free, YouTube you look at, and they say, oh, look at this stock, I gave you the perfect call, perfect recommendation to buy, unless if they're licensed. SEC is going to crack down on them hard body. And they've been cracking down for a little while now. It's the FTC actually more than anything. So, we're always compliant here, and that's always what we've been saying. Now, of course, just to actually give Rosina here some advice. So, if they're down 80, if your positions are down 84%, then at this point, you may as well hold on, right? Like, if you don't care for it to drop down 84% and to still hold on, you may as well hold on to another, few percent more. Now, that's a blunt answer, right? Now, it's to say that history could repeat itself, not with COVID. Hopefully not with COVID. I mean, I guess it can repeat itself with COVID, right? But history could repeat itself in the sense of news and a short squeeze, and for this to make a temporary run back up. So if that's what you're waiting for, just realize what has happened in the past. And not just with COVID. Look back on the monthly chart, look back on the weekly chart, look back on the daily chart for any time this stock has had good news out on it, OCGN, because we love this stock. It's a good stock to day trade. Not a good swing trade, apparently, right? So, it's a good stock to day trade off of news, but it's to say that over the years, this stock has had some really good squeezes in the past. Should that happen in the near future, for whatever reason, just realize what's going to happen to it again. History is going to repeat itself. This thing will tank after the pump. So, obviously not to name names, but over my 8 years of being here and being an instructor with Fausto, I've coached hundreds. If I don't know, I don't have a head count here, so I'm not going to say thousands and act as if I'm bigger than I'm not, but it could be in the thousands, definitely in the hundreds. I have coached hundreds and hundreds of our students here. And, for the folks that I see that continue to hold on to day trades overnight, it's a bad mistake to make repetitively. And it's a shame because they don't seem to learn their mistakes here. And if that's the case, could I just ask? And honestly, I'm like, we just got to face reality at times, right? Could I just ask, like, if you don't learn from those mistakes over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, what's the point? Aren't you just gambling? Come on now. So, we're here to make our days pay. We're here to make supplemental income, right? It's funny. I phrased it in the trading room earlier this morning, like for Joanne, I think, right? Joanne made $400 on the Rev trade, and she actually phrased it in a great way. Said like, "Hey, I just paid like my electric bill on 2 houses. That's awesome, right?" Well, that's what we're looking to do here on a trade by trade basis at times, sometimes on a day by day basis. Hopefully on a week by week basis. But if you're not making money consistently, then unless if you're a new student joining us here, which hey, for some of us it will take a little time. Some of us get it right away within a month, a few weeks. Some of us take a couple months. The light bulbs will start popping up there, turning on. But if you're consistently holding on to day trades overnight, and you're not learning from that lesson, and you're down thousands of your hard-earned money, I just would suggest for you to quit. Not CTU as just in particular. I would say trading as a whole, like stock market, because you're just completely gambling if you're doing that. As a new student, yeah, you're going to learn the hard way a couple times, I'm sure. And that's why we always encourage new students at least to trade small positions, 100 shares, 50 shares. Like Fausto says, one stinking share, right? just to get the feel, just to know the strategy. The more that you do it, the better you get. The better you get, the more money that you would like to risk. Now, at the end of the day, are we still like, risking money? Are we, taking risky trades? Yeah, at times, some volatile stocks. I'm wrong on trades at times. I had my first losing day in the last 2.5, 3 weeks, like I said at the top of the hour yesterday. It was down $168, I believe, by the end of the day. It's tough. Some days aren't going to work out, right? But you got to make sure that you learn from the hard mistakes and never repeat those. You're going to make bonehead mistakes every now and then. You're always going to make a bonehead mistake or two every now and then. And the more that you're here with us and the more that you're learning and progressing, those bonehead mistakes, you make fewer and fewer over time. So, for the mistakes I made yesterday, which weren't many, I just chose the wrong stocks to follow at first. Because of that, I didn't really make much money, and then I just had losing trades. So for the tiny losing trades that accrued, you learn from them and you take that into the next day. That's all. That's all we could try and do, right? So for OCGN, long story short, is this going to squeeze back up at some point in time? I'm sure at some point in time. But we don't hold our breath waiting for that, though. And if you're already in this position and down 84% on your position, unless if it's money that you need to pull out to pay the IRS or the mob, I don't know. But unless if it's that, I feel like you could hold on a little bit longer and wait for the next squeeze. Just realize when that next squeeze happens, whenever it is, whenever that next squeeze will be, it's going to dump back down pretty hard, pretty fast as it squeezed up, right? History repeats itself. All righty, folks. We have another few more minutes, another 5 or so more minutes I want to go through. So, question from Donna, who wrote me through email actually this morning. So I wanted to make sure I go through her email. Donna is just a trial member in the room this week. It is moving very fast, but I'm only following, not trading. I appreciate you doing that, Donna. I can't say that enough for just any trial member joining us here. New student, trade small shares, not much more than that. But as a trial member, just sit back, just kind of follow the chat, go through the Traders Talk workshops that you have, not just this live version, but the recordings that are on the student dashboard. You have access to those. Make sure that you talk to your education advisor. They can walk you through it. And I believe that we've covered this now at this point for Donna. So Donna basically was saying, I don't see that's mentioned much in the trading room. I thought, regarding level 4, I thought it was based on the heat map. Is that the same level? I don't see it as much in the room. I don't hear as much about using level 3. So really quick, folks, aside from Traders Talk, the only education that we provide is in our main curriculum, phases 1, 2, and 3 of our stock trading course. So most of the members here, like Norman and Bill and Michael and, just any one of our names that we could say otherwise, Alan, who's joining us here, I believe, Leda and Norman and John and Bill and Lori and Joe and Bob and Chuck. And just most of our members in our room that you see are students that have access to the main curriculum that we provide. But just when it comes to following the live trading room, well, on our screen here, the level 3 that we have is the TradeStation Matrix. That's the program on the far right side of the screen in blue and red. So right over here, when we're calling out stocks, we're calling out the stocks based off iceberg levels, aka IB in the trading room. If there's, a 500,000 share order on the ask, well, it would pop up on level 3 on the far right side, namely in red. That would be resistance. But in the trading room, you would likely see that the chat, the call out be, so-and-so stock 500K IB at so-and-so price. So we're getting that information from level 3. We're getting that information from level 4, which is Bookmap. That's the heat map. So, I covered the REV trade already. I demonstrated level 4 certainly already in this workshop. So I hope that I covered that enough for Donna right there. This goes for anyone because we're nearing the end of this workshop live right now. For any one of us on social media that's been watching, I appreciate you folks joining in. We do this every week inside our live trading room. But if you have any other questions, folks, feel more than free to chat me inside the live trading room. Feel more than free to email me furthermore later on today, tonight, tomorrow. If you're watching this on recording, if you have any questions for any one of us on YouTube, my email address, I post it right here, josh@c2trading.com. At least on YouTube, I believe that's showing on the stream. All right. And I'll be more than happy to talk to you on the side. All right. But last one here, actually. Question also from Donna. Could be two separate Donnas here, actually. Two separate email handles. How about that? Donna after Donna. All right. So question from Donna R. We had Donna P just earlier. Donna R right now asking, just really quickly, a couple quick questions to finish up. So what determines if a stock is on the watch list or not? How do you know what stocks to watch? Well, we based off pre-market activity, after-hours activity from the day before, perhaps. So for really quick, as we just kind of come full circle on KAVL, that was the stock I started off Traders Talk with. What do you know? A little bounce off at 2 there, folks. Not guaranteed, but it's possible. So, hey, nice little move on the KAVL right after we left off on this stock, actually. Led to a pretty damn good bounce for about 20 cents off the whole number. Would you look at that? Nice trade. But, KAVL was a stock that we put on our list this morning because it exploded in the after hours off of whatever news. It was just up big come pre-market this morning when we woke up and opened up our platform. And just we thought there was a chance it could run. Clearly, we were wrong with that, thought. It didn't run. Well, it kind of power walked on its way down, but maybe later on today it can make a better move up. I don't know, but definitely started off that 2 level. So pre-market activity, what's on the percent gainers and losers lists, namely, if you join us inside our live trading room, we do our morning meeting every morning at 9 o'clock Eastern time. We do also do that weekly on our YouTube channel. So for most of us that are watching regularly on YouTube, you may know that. But as a first-time attendee, hey, every morning at 9 o'clock Eastern, Fausto Pugliese himself, president and founder of Cyber Trading University, he'll come on, do our morning broadcast, our pre-market huddle, as we call it, and he'll scan the market. So the more that you watch him and hear his thoughts and insights, I'll be tagging in for him tomorrow at least. But, it's just to say, you hear our insights, and the more that you watch us, hear us, you do it yourself, you naturally become a lot better at it. Whew. All right, folks, I got an empty water bottle here, and I've had an empty water bottle for the last 10 minutes. So I appreciate you folks sticking with me here with dry mouth. So we're going to finish up for right now. For all of us once more on social media, Facebook Live, YouTube, we'll have this up as a recording on our YouTube channel at least. Any questions that you have, feel more than free to send on over through email, josh@c2trading.com. Join us Monday to Friday inside our live trading room by going right down to the link on the blue banner below right there on the stream to get started. For Norman, Janice, Charlene, Robert, Lewis, Rosina, and the 110 of us live inside the trading room right now, I appreciate you folks sticking with me here for Traders Talk today. I'll be back on the mic with a fresh mouth ready to go at 2:30 Eastern later today. All right, folks? So at 2:30, I'll be back on for the afternoon meeting. Talk to you then.
Become a Cyber Group member today. Just click the link below and receive all these amazing products and a world of knowledge for just $9. Do it.